My husband is a renowned scientist. During an interview, when asked about emotions, he said, "I don't consider myself a qualified partner. No matter what, I will never prioritize love and affection. I only wish to dedicate my limited time to the endless pursuit of science." After the show aired, praises for his fearless dedication to science flooded in. Yet, I quietly tucked away my medical report. I have cancer, terminal stage. The days he went to London to receive his award were my last in this world. In my final moment of fading consciousness, it was the blinding light of the surgical lamp. And as my spirit detached, I could see the full view of the operating room. When I saw the ECG monitor beside the bed, the line representing my heartbeat had flattened. I suddenly realized, it seems I have died. For some reason, I became a spirit, able to drift everywhere. Just this morning, I was still well enough to exchange a few words with Leo Chong. He had an international conference presentation and was flying out at noon today. So I got up at 7 in the morning to make breakfast for him. Leo Chong, who looks so unassuming, is actually quite picky about his food. The toast has to be toasted just a little bit extra, and the milk has to be warmed to exactly 80% hot. As my son puts it, "Mom, you've spoiled Dad's taste buds." I don't really have a response to that. After all, I've been taking meticulous care of him for 20 or 30 years, and even the most troublesome tasks have become habits. "Leo, I heard that due to some air mass, temperatures are going to drop suddenly in the UK. I packed an extra down vest for you. The chewing gum is in the left pocket of your backpack. You always get earaches on flights, and chewing one might help a bit. Don't stay up too late at night. Has your heart been bothering you lately? Get to bed early. It's the polar continental air mass." My words were abruptly cut off, and I looked up slowly, meeting his clear, lucid eyes. The saying, "time spares no one," doesn't quite apply to Leo Chong. His brow is still strong, and though he's nearing middle age, it's as if the years have left no mark on him. So the chill that had clung to me since youth could still pierce straight through to the depths of my heart. He was correcting the imprecision in my first statement. The UK experiences polar continental air mass due to certain air current influences, but I only wanted to show I cared. I lower my gaze and straightened his tie for him. "Got it. Take care on the road." "Leo," he brushed past me, assuming I had nothing going on this afternoon. But that wasn't the case. He was heading across the Atlantic to attend an academic conference. I had a meeting to attend, too. It was my pre-surgery consultation. The doctor said the success rate for the surgery was only 20%. When the doctor informed me that the stomach cancer hadn't been caught in time, and the cancer cells had already spread throughout my body, I sat in the hospital corridor all afternoon. On the wall, mounted TV, today's interview was airing. The same one Leo Chong had been invited to a few days prior. The man with the icy gaze had no desire to waste time on anything beyond scientific research. Even when asked about his wife, he'd only brush it off briefly. "I'm a blockhead. I don't understand romance. My wife was more of a responsibility to me. Celebrate anniversaries? That's just formalism. I'd rather spend that time running more experiments." Sounds exactly like something Leo Chong would say. Forget anniversaries. He doesn't even celebrate birthdays. When I was younger, I'd pester him to celebrate, hoping one day he'd show up with a bouquet of vibrant roses. But I never did receive a single rose. That brain of his, capable of memorizing endless data, simply refused to remember those 4 digits of my birthday. Eventually, I'd just sit alone at the table, prepare a bowl of longevity noodles, and call it a celebration. Leo Chong is an iron tree. It'll never bloom. It took me over 20 years to finally accept that truth. So it's only in recent years that I've started to feel like something was wrong with me. Call it exhaustion. Call it giving up. Funny enough, he is he, and I am I. It's a truth he laid bare decades ago, and I'm only understanding it now. I crumpled the diagnosis report into a ball, stuffed it in my pocket, and only called my son. Charlie Chong is close to me because Leo Chong dislikes children, and his only son knows nothing about scientific research. After listening to my emotionless account, Charlie's voice choked up a bit. "Mom, what about you and Dad?" I haven't told him. I lower my eyes, staring at the granite beneath my feet. I don't want to tell him. He is he. I am I. Besides, what would he even do if he knew I'm sick? Would he drop his round, the clock obsession with research to take care of me? Charlie, Mom doesn't know how much longer she has left to live. If I die someday, don't even tell your father. I looked down and smoothed my clothes. Why bother Leo with something he wouldn't care about anyway? Okay, Charlie responded over the phone. Mom, honestly, Dad never deserved it in the first place. He truly doesn't deserve someone as wonderful as you. My spirit drifted through the hospital corridors. I saw the doctor emerge from the operating room, shaking his head regretfully, while Charlie Chong wept beside my hospital bed. He had brought me to the hospital since noon, waiting outside the operating room until evening, but I failed to hold on and never open my eyes again. He cried so bitterly, and I anxiously circled around him, yet he couldn't see me. I longed to hug him, to comfort him like I did when he was a child, and tell him not to cry. Charlie has worked so hard, though he didn't become a scientist as his father hoped. His paintings are loved by many, and he has an exhibition opening in Italy later this year. I sat beside him, gazing up at the evening stars, singing to him just as I did to soothe him when he was little. He couldn't hear me, but I felt that somehow he would know his mother was by his side. Suddenly, a gust of wind carried me to a place far, far away. The senses of the spirit after death are truly wondrous. I could still perceive what was happening in the hospital even after I passed. Once again, he arrived at the conference venue where Leo Chong was holding his meeting. That meeting of his was expected to last 7 days. The man in a tailored suit easily became the center of attention in the room. Young, handsome, with a resume that could be called unparalleled in history. In fact, come to think of it, Leo Chong had probably been the center of attention since he was a child. Back in university, the number of girls who had a crush on him was as countless as fish in a river. In those days, when traditional values still held some sway, there were girls who boldly chased after him right to his dormitory building. Each time, he would look at them with an expression that kept others at arm's length. Dressed in the plainest white shirt, textbooks tucked under his arm, he would lower his gaze with restraint and detachment. I'm sorry, but I don't like you. Yet his words were exceptionally blunt. What many men took pride in as popularity was, for him, merely a source of annoyance. By that time, he had already won national awards so frequently it became routine. His name often came up in our teachers' conversations, and back then, I was one of the students who looked up to him. Though from the very outskirts of his orbit, I only dared to steal a glimpse of his shirt corner when leaving the cafeteria. Leo Chong absolutely didn't know I'd been secretly in love with him for 3 or 4 years before our blind date. Neither did I ever expect that 3 years after graduation, the blind date my family arranged for me would turn out to be him. I don't have anyone I like. This was what Leo Chong told me during our first meeting. If I must say what I like, it's conducting experiments, calculations, basically nothing involving people. He frowned slightly, yet even that couldn't diminish his striking good looks. He described himself succinctly and clearly. We're not here to talk about love. We're just ensuring we have offspring. Can you understand that? Truthfully, Leo Chong made himself perfectly clear back then. It was me who thought I could accept it. Me who chose to be with him. I always believed there'd be plenty of time, that someday his crystal, clear, honest gaze would linger on me. I always believed he would come to like me. Was it foolish to pin my day and night efforts on the delusion that familiarity breeds affection? My spirit drifted to his side, watching him converse solemnly with the scholar across from him. The man was tall and slender, detached yet elegant. Was I really that naive? Hands in my pockets, I gazed at him. They say hi. IQ individuals view ordinary people the way ordinary people view fools. Meanwhile, my remains were loaded into the funeral home's vehicle. The academic conference buzzed with lively chatter. Leo, do you think I was a fool? Leo Chong sent me a photo of London's nightscape from his phone. Of course, I could no longer reply. Charlie Chong truly never told his father about my death. Even the obituary sent from my WeChat was hidden from Leo Chong. This was for the best. I clung to him too much in life. I feared even death would inconvenience him, forcing flight changes. Besides, I never felt he desired any final meeting with me. The night view of London was quite beautiful, but for some reason, that day, he stared at his phone for a long time on the windy balcony. I leaned over to look and suddenly realized that in the past, I had always replied to his messages almost instantly. When he went abroad on business trips before, he would casually snap a few photos for me, and I would respond with emojis saved from Charlie. A thumbs up or 2 thumbs up, captioned awesome. This time, he waited for a long time, but I didn't reply. Professor Chong, it's raining outside again. Come back quickly. Don't catch a cold. A young woman's voice sounded behind him. It was his student. In academic circles, some things in this regard are tacitly understood. The girl moved closer, somewhat intimately, to drape a coat over him, but he pushed her away. Fish and chips. Tastes awful. Leo Chong sent me pictures of the restaurant. My body was pushed into the cremation furnace. It's raining again. Leo Chong sent me the view outside his hotel window. Relatives and friends attended my burial ceremony. Tonight's results will be announced. He's flying back tomorrow. Leo Chong stood on the podium, surrounded by cameras and microphones aimed at him. I managed to understand a bit with my somewhat broken English. His achievement seemed to add another brilliant chapter to human progress. There he was, under the spotlight, shining brightly and never failing expectations in his field of expertise. I think that's why I've loved him for so many years. But that was me loving him, not him loving me. In the drizzling April rain, as the ashes were laid to rest beside a square tombstone, I finally understood this truth. That night, after the conference ended, when Leo Chong called me for the 3rd time without an answer, he changed his flight to the early morning. On the plane, he kept frowning, his face colder than usual. But then again, all these years I've been at his beck and call, suddenly being unreachable must have felt strange to him. Actually, I used to pick him up from the airport every time he returned to the country, and I would definitely arrive 1 or 2 hours early, waiting for him right at the airport. These were habits too. One simply can't let their beloved suffer. I always did everything I could to make his life comfortable, but this time, he had to walk alone through the nearly empty terminal hall and hail an overpriced taxi at 4 or 5 in the morning. When he got home at 6 a.m., he knocked first, but no one answered. He used his fingerprint to unlock the door and pushed it open. The house was empty. Everything was just as he had left it. The sink spotless, the dining table bare, except my usual pair of slippers were also placed by the entryway. He unbuttoned his coat, which he hadn't had time to change out of in his rush, and paced around the unlit house, circle after circle, the bedroom, the balcony, the bathroom. Finally, he pulled open the washing machine door. Finding nothing, he froze, then took out his phone to call me. After a long wait, a busy tone, he took a deep breath and swiped his thumb to another number on his list. Charlie's. The relationship between the father and son had actually been tense even before Charlie reached adulthood. All these years, when Charlie came home, it was only to see me. He never intended to engage with his father. Leo Chong, for his part, had that kind of attitude too, immersed in his academic pursuits, which essentially meant he didn't want to be involved in raising the child. He was absent during the most crucial stages of his son's growth, so his son never spoke to him with much warmth. "What do you want? Where's your mom?" Both of their tones were sharp, but Charlie paused for a moment, then came a strange, indescribable laugh, and he murmured the words again. "Where's my mom? My mom's gone." "Gone where?" Leo Chong's brow furrowed deeper, the early morning light just catching the crease between his eyebrows. I could hear, from the other end of the line, my son's voice suddenly turning pale with realization. "Not gone where? Mom passed away." "Dad." A long silence stretched across both ends of the call. From my angle, I could see Leo Chong's knuckles turning white as he gripped the phone. "Still acting like a lowlife making crude jokes at your age?" Said in a lecturing tone. Didn't take it seriously. Apparently, The idea that I died without even notifying him for the funeral wouldn't cross Leo Chong's mind. Charlie fell silent on the other end of the line, then let out a scoff with a tone of resignation. Dad, I haven't joked with you once since 6th grade. Charlie hung up, the phone emitting a dial tone. I found it strange. Leo seemed frozen, standing there still holding the phone. Slowly, he sat down on the living room sofa. Leo Chong was rigorous and serious in his academic work, but his personal life was the complete opposite. He was utterly carefree. That's why I was always the one tidying up the house. His study was often piled with manuscripts, and he never let me touch them. I'd been scolded by him more than once over things like this. Looking back, maybe I was never really the right fit for him. Perhaps he needed a female scientist who could explore the vast universe of academia with him, rather than a third-rate magazine editor who only knows how to wash sofa covers until they fade white and has no idea what a polar air mass is. Light gradually seeped into the room. I saw him tracing the lace trim of the sofa cover, that delicate lace which had already gathered a thin layer of dust. He kneaded it over and over again. The front door of the house swung open. Leo Chong whipped his head around so sharply, I feared he might strain his neck. It turned out to be Charlie standing at the door, jingling his keys. Dad, good timing. You're here. Where did Mom keep the ID card and family records before? We need to go to the police station. Leo Chong's fingers, still tangled in the lace, froze mid-motion to deregister her household registration. Inside the cabinet beneath the TV lay some of my and Leo Chong's personal documents. He was the type to carelessly toss such things aside, even medals from major awards. So I always made sure to carefully store them for him. He personally didn't care about this, but I would always delightedly stroke it with gentle fondness. What's the point? He didn't understand why I was happy about his award, so I just smiled and linked my arm through his. Because you're my husband. Of course I'm happy when my husband wins an award. When I was younger, I still had moments of clinging to him and acting coy, but over time, life's wear and tear has mellowed me quite a bit. Leo Chong was holding on to our marriage certificates, unwilling to let go. The photo on the marriage certificate wasn't even a good one. After all, the corner of his mouth didn't lift even slightly. While I was beaming as if it were a grand wedding meant for me alone, Charlie found my ID card and turned to see Leo Chong holding those 2 crimson booklets, staring at them, lost in thought. Dad, don't worry. Now that Mom's gone, your marital relationship with her is naturally dissolved. You're not her husband anymore. Never will be again. Happy, you're free to pursue romantic relationships with those young female students you mentor. That tone was clearly laced with sharp sarcasm. In the past, Leo Chong would have lost his temper upon hearing his son speak like this. But this time, he remained silent for a long while. Or rather, he had been spacing out for quite some time. He just slowly stood up and picked up the trench coat hanging on the sofa. I'll go with you. Throughout the journey, neither of them spoke a word. To be honest, I had actually wondered what expression Leo Chong would have after my death. Probably just a casual, "Oh, I see," before diving back into his great research dedicated to humanity. He doesn't love me. This, I know. So my departure would likely be nothing more than an episode to him. Neither big nor small. Just like a pebble tossed into a lake. He actually went through the trouble of canceling my household registration himself. I don't know whether to thank him for sentimentality or not. Watching my own household registration get canceled is quite a unique experience. Charlie handed over some documents, while Leo Chong sat waiting on a chair in the nearby hall. Even so, he was still striking. His jade green coat made him stand out like a solitary pine tree in a crowd, and I could always spot him at a glance. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. His dark eyes quietly reflected the hurried passers-by. Just like that, Charlie Chong filled out my household registration cancellation form, and the clerk confirmed it from the other side of the window. When it was handed back, a new stamp had been added to the family records booklet. Cancelled. Leo Chong stared at those 2 words for a long, long time, so long that Charlie snatched the booklet right out of his father's hands. I'll come pick up my mom's belongings in a few days. Who said you could take them? Leo Chong's voice and used for so long, sounded parched and rough. I'm her son. Why can't I take them? And I'm her husband. Like hell you are. After Charlie spat those words, both of them fell silent. Leo Chong was still standing there, but it felt as if all the strength had been drained from him in an instant. He closed his eyes and said slowly, "Your mother never told me she was sick." "Yeah." Charlie nodded. "What good would telling you do?" Charlie snatched away the family records booklet stamped canceled, leaving Leo Chong standing alone at the entrance of the police station. Truth is, I always knew Leo Chong was just a passerby. Trying to melt someone like him was impossible. He was always rational, always aloof. Under the scorching sun, he turned and walked down the street filled with cicada songs. I thought Leo Chong would go back to tackling his unfinished research projects. Instead, he started spacing out the moment he stepped into the entryway, just pure spacing out, like standing in front of the handmade model I'd placed in the entryway. For over 30 minutes, I'd brought that model back from Melbourne, but could never get the last piece to fit right. He'd held me, called me silly, and then pieced it together effortlessly, like sitting on the sofa, staring at the aloe plant we'd raised together until the sun had long set. The aloe vera was a folk remedy I got from the Chinese medicine clinic near our gate. Back when my skin was always acting up, I'd often stare at him enviously, poking him and asking why his skin was so flawless. Most of the time, he'd dodge away with a look of disdain. Other times, he'd take my finger and give it a gentle nibble. As night fell, he sat alone in the dimly lit living room, not bothering to turn on the lights. I thought, maybe he still isn't used to my absence. After all, I'd taken care of him for so many years, and Junlin would always leave a light on for Leo Chong to come home to. At 1 a.m., he finally stirred. He took a cold shower, burrowed under the covers, and gazed up at the night sky hanging high above. Leo Chong's routine was usually very disciplined. Staying up past midnight was rare for him, but he still seemed wide awake. He suddenly flipped over and sat up. The moon hung high overhead. He got out of bed and walked to the balcony. The small cucumber and pepper plants I'd haggled over with the market vendor hadn't been watered for days. Wilting sadly, he crouched down, picked up the watering can nearby, and gave them a sparing drink. As he watered them, his hand trembled slightly. Few lights remained lit in the residential complex at night. Suddenly, a dog began barking, its cries weaving into a desolate blanket of silence. I couldn't go anywhere. These past few days, I could only drift around Leo Chong. Despite not sleeping all night, Leo Chong surprisingly cleaned the entire apartment the next day. Something utterly out of character. The school, the company, his students, they all called him, but he barely reacted. Each time, he'd reply flatly, "I just lost my spouse." Thinking back on our over 20 years together, his behavior after my death is something I simply can't understand. He wouldn't shed a single tear after I died. That much I always knew. He said he wouldn't invest emotion in anything outside his research. And that's exactly how it was. Honestly, I thought he'd be the first among those close to me to move past the grief of my passing. He probably wouldn't even feel sad about me leaving. His indifference runs bone deep, almost carrying a cruel divinity. But now it doesn't seem like his normal reaction, like staring at the gift I brought him for my Morocco trip for an entire afternoon. The doorbell rang, and he slowly shuffled over to answer it. Outside stood Mr. Zhao, a good friend who lives in the same neighborhood and is Leo Chong's closest confidant. "Hey Leo, just out for a walk. Here, got you some flatbread from that shop at the neighborhood entrance." Leo Chong's gaze shifted somewhat blankly to the flatbread. It must be said, Mr. Zhao truly knows him. Leo hadn't eaten for 2 days and a night. Without me, Leo doesn't even know how to cook. The sunset bled like crimson across the porch as Leo turned slightly to invite him inside. After a long pause, he said softly, "Even you were invited to her funeral." That single sentence left the other man speechless. Leo, it's all in the past now. Let the departed rest in peace. Mr. Zhao stayed with Leo Chong at his place for a while. Leo, never much of a talker, grew even more silent. glancing at his watch. Before he could even speak, Leo said, "You should go now." What a personality, never sparing anyone's feelings. Luckily, Mr. Zhao wasn't one to take offense, saying goodbye at the door. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly leaned back in, as if hesitating for a long time before finally mustering the courage to speak. The sunset echoed quietly behind him, his gaze seeming to swell with sorrow. When Mrs. Lin was alive, she often told me she envied me. Envied me for what? Envied that I could do research, that I understood those complex theories. She said, if only her mind worked that quickly too, maybe Leo would have talked to her more. The fading crimson of the sunset reflected in the other's pupils, and Leo froze where he stood. Leo, giving your whole heart to someone isn't meant for that person to. Completely trampled to pieces. I leaned against the doorframe, watching Leo Chong, still organizing our things. He'd been at it all night, seemingly tireless. As he pulled out a photo album and opened it, inside were photos I had compiled of the two of us. Truthfully, there were very few. Despite having a face that attracted admirers since childhood, Leo Chong never liked taking photos. Most of the time, I had to drag him into pictures by force. And then there were times when he had no choice but to be photographed. Like the one he was now tracing with his fingertips, the cable car ride we took together at Fragrant Hills. Back in those days, there wasn't much safety protection. After he explained the mechanics of the cable car to me, I was terrified and clung tightly to his arm, earning me an icy look that seemed to say he regretted ever giving that science lesson. I remembered there was a story behind this photo. That was probably the only time we ever argued. When I threatened to divorce him, Leo Chong had always been busy, especially when he was younger, with virtually no free time to spare. I really had to pester him for a long time and do a lot of convincing before he agreed to set aside 3 or 4 days for a trip with me. The date was set, the tickets were bought, and I was already full of anticipation starting 3 or 4 days before departure. But then, just the day before we were supposed to leave, he suddenly had a group meeting he couldn't miss. No matter what, I was already quite upset, but not to the point of hysterics. What really broke me was the fact that his group meeting was out of town, and he was going alone with a female student. That female student came from a well-connected family. Whenever I want to take care of Leo, she would always dress up flashily and hover around him. Every time I came to see Leo, she would corner him with professional questions, dragging it out for over half an hour. And there I was, holding onto that box of takeout that was going cold, waiting awkwardly. I asked him if he could cancel the meeting, but he said it was impossible. You go by yourself, he said indifferently while sorting through his papers. He said those words in the morning. By evening, the divorce papers were on his desk. He finally looked up from his pile of newspapers and data to meet my gaze. Back then, very few people got divorced. But at that moment, I truly wanted out, utterly broken, emotions inexplicably tangled. Maybe because I was already pregnant with Charlie, hormones raging, such a reckless act of venting frustration. Only my younger self could have done it. Yet now I find myself thinking, it would have been better if we'd really divorced then. That night, Leo Chong packed his bags and stood outside my room. He was never much of a talker, so even now, I don't know how he managed to cancel that supposedly unmissable group meeting. Anyway, the next day, he set off on a trip with me, and we took that photo. I clung to his arm, pressing close, while he remained expressionless, his handsome face cold and detached. After we returned, his career hit a rough patch. Some of that might have been my fault, just a little. It seems like we hardly have any happy memories together. It's quite remarkable that we managed to marry and have children. He flipped over the photo paper, revealing a sentence I had written on the back. I'm sorry, Leo. I never knew how to make you happy. Suddenly, he clenched the photo paper tightly. The edge dug into his flesh until it scraped a bloody mark. Leo Chong found the wine we brewed last year in the storage room. The lid sealed with a note I wrote. Do not open until July, 3 years from now. Leo. When I added that line, I already knew I had cancer. I wrote it because I understood he wouldn't remember these things. While tidying the study, he uncovered a note pressed beneath the glass desktop. A time will come to ride the wind and cleave the waves. I'll set my cloud, white sail, and cross the sea which raves. I wrote that for him when his project hit a snag, and his team was scrambling. All the support I could offer was 3 meals a day, water at just the right temperature in the early hours, and these quietly hidden words of encouragement under his books. The lotus seed and red bean soup I made still sits quietly in the fridge. He hates bitter tastes and refused to eat it unless the lotus hearts were removed. I coaxed him with a smile. All right, next time, I'll peel the lotus seeds before making it for you, okay? But deep down, I already knew there wouldn't be a next time. Now, he sits at the dining table, gently pries off the cork I'd sealed, and slowly eats that box of lotus seed and red bean soup with the knot, yet expired wine. Then 15 minutes later, he rushes to the bathroom and vomits violently. Well, that thing's been sitting in the fridge for over half a month. Leo Chung doesn't drink much. He once said alcohol only clouds his thinking, yet he finished that entire bottle. His alcohol tolerance must be poor. He clung desperately to the bottle, making me wonder if I'd misremembered the dates and the wine had fully fermented. He stumbles back to the bathroom to vomit again. A loud noise echoes from the bathroom. He collapses over the sink, water gushing over his flushed ears. He slowly lifts his head, staring at the reflection in the mirror. Then suddenly, without warning, he threw a punch, smashing it into the mirror. Scientist Chong's got quite the arm strength. The mirror cracked, blood trickling down the fissure. He stared at the distorted reflection within, utterly dejected. I rarely saw him like this, so emotionally explosive. No matter how I provoked him in the past, he never showed much reaction, whether it was anger or even expressing love. The absurd thing is, after decades of marriage, it turns out he never even properly expressed love to me. The blood on his hand stopped flowing, and he walked out of the bathroom, dragging a chair woodenly before heading to the wardrobe in the bedroom. He wobbled as he climbed onto the chair. The top shelf of the wardrobe held our seasonal bedding. I've always been sensitive to cold. Even a slight chill is unbearable for me. When I was younger, I'd playfully cling to him, stretching out my arms toward him after coming in from the winter cold. I'm cold. Hold me. He refused outright. Buy a blanket. After that, I bought a woolen blanket and no longer needed his embrace. Yes, when did I start losing that warmth? I can't recall. That blanket is still hidden deep in the cupboard. I wrap myself in it every winter. So, this was what he was searching for. He tugged at a corner of it. Then he lost his balance. He fell hard, still clutching the blanket tightly. It made a loud noise, but he seemed unfazed. After a long moment, he just held onto my blanket tightly, as if it were the only thing left in his grasp. He seemed unable to stand. So slowly, dragging the blanket, he curled into a corner of the sofa. He wrapped himself in the blanket. Perhaps his drunken frenzy had run its course. He hadn't slept for 3 days and had vomited all he ate. He closed his eyes. Someone who shouldn't feel cold was now bundling up so tightly. It even seemed a bit clingy. My thing. Would he cling to it? I'd never considered that before. He struggled a few times, grabbed his phone, and dialed a number. It was Mr. Zhao. Leo, let me tell you something. On the other end of the line, Mr. Zhao seemed to have anticipated this. Mrs. Lin is gone, and that's that. The dead can't come back to life. Don't dwell on it. You, Mr. Zhao. His words were cut off. In the hushed stillness of the night, he stared up at the ceiling that would never light up again and asked the person on the other end of the call, Mr. Zhao, did she come to hate me? After I died, he didn't shed a single tear. So why now, holding onto my belongings? Is he crying like this? Leo Chong and Charlie got into a fight over who should keep my things. It got so bad, they ended up in the hospital. Several relatives and friends showed up. Charlie, being held back by others, yelled at Leo Chong, "What right do you have to keep my mom's things? Did you ever care for me growing up? Did you ever fulfill your responsibilities as a father? Just because you didn't want to be disturbed. Just because you're a great scientist. Yes, you contribute to humanity. So noble, so grand. So what? I don't matter. Mom didn't matter, and now she's gone. What gives you the right to take Mom's things from me? Pinned down by Mr. Zhao, Liu Cheng ultimately said nothing. He wiped the blood from his lips. In just a few days, he had changed completely, wasting away so quickly. The summer breeze drifted through the hospital corridor as his son raged behind him, and Mr. Zhao patted his shoulder. All right, Leo, who can you blame for things coming to this? A rather neutral remark, to which Liu Cheng coughed twice. I never thought. So faint, it was snuffed out by the gentle hum of the summer wind. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly in the summer heat. He surely didn't know I was floating right in front of him. He clutched his chest tightly, as if bewildered by the overwhelming pain there. I never thought I'd lose her. Now it was Liu Cheng who was suffering, and I was the one longing for release. I don't know what becomes of people after death, nor how long I must drift like this. I can do nothing but watch Liu Cheng day after day. This man who weighed so lightly in my life for decades. Now that he's dead, I never want to see him again. Leo tidied up both the house and himself, shaved off days of stubble, restyled his hair. Time has always favored him. Light streaming into the bathroom caught his profile, and even in his disheveled state, he looked devastatingly handsome in a uniquely compelling way. He bought a plane ticket and flew alone to Italy to secretly visit Charlie's exhibition. It must have been the first time he ever saw Charlie's paintings. Despite Charlie being all grown up, when Charlie was little, he cried over everything. Leo had research to focus on and found it annoying, so he dumped Charlie on me and Grandma. As Charlie grew older and started school, Leo grew disappointed that his son inherited none of his mathematical talent and simply stopped engaging with him. Despite being a professor himself, he refused to explain even a single problem to Charlie. So now, standing before a massive floor, ceiling painting, what exactly was he thinking as he gazed upward? He stayed alone in the exhibition hall until sunset, then left as quietly as if he had never been there. He also visited my grave. He's always been a man of few words when it comes to me. So he and the photo on my tombstone just stared at each other from day to night. When he left, he reached out as if to touch my picture, but withdrew his hand. The photo was chosen by Charlie. There I am, forever smiling gently. Back home, he took a shower and changed into the clothes I insisted on buying him during the new year. Slowly, he took out the sleeping pills from his bedside drawer. Lately, he couldn't sleep at all without them, so he'd asked the doctor for a prescription. He stared at the box of sleeping pills in his hand for a long time. In the empty, silent room, it was as if the shadow of the person from the past could no longer be found. He tossed the sleeping pills into his backpack. Just before closing the door to leave home, suddenly, without any warning, he cast a deep glance in my direction, then walked away without looking back. Liu Cheng knew of my existence. 3 days later, I suddenly realized this fact, because since 3 days ago, Liu Cheng had started writing messages in his notebook. June, I don't know if you're by my side. Perhaps you are, perhaps not, but I'm certain of this. If that experimental direction wasn't wrong, you'll definitely see these words. What does this mean? I blinked as Liu Cheng boarded the green train, this rumbling machine advancing relentlessly toward the snow country. The destination on the ticket was Russia. Green shadows swept past the window like wind. As he wrote, I gradually realized something deeply unsettling. If souls exist after death, which is my current state, then logically, everyone should become a soul after dying. So why have I only seen myself? Why do I exist? Why am I the only one? What exactly am I? If I become a ghost, why can't I see other ghosts? Could it be that I'm the only ghost in this world? Once this question arose, I realized I'd taken everything before for granted. The fact that I retained consciousness after death was itself an extremely strange occurrence. I abruptly lifted my head, looking at the man meticulously writing in his notebook. It wasn't coincidence. None of this was coincidence. My post-death consciousness wasn't some supernatural fluke. It was because of Liu Cheng, this man who works with the world's most cutting-edge technology, standing at the academic pinnacle, had done something to my body without my knowledge. The universe follows causal laws. The law of entropy tells us the universe moves from order to disorder. Time only flows forward. Flowers bloom only to wither. The dead cannot return to life. The train rumbled along, Liu Chong leaning against the carriage, his hand never stopping as he wrote in the notebook. How ridiculous. June, I used to scoff at the theory of cosmic regression. I thought it was just a delusion held by those desperate souls longing to return to the past. But now, I cling desperately to the possibility of that once dismissed hypothesis. The cosmic information conservation theory, a fringe theory proposing that no information in the universe truly vanishes. If every moment of consciousness is an information fragment, then you might be recorded within some cosmic structure. Despite my disbelief in cosmic regression, I still took advantage of your hospitalization 20 years ago, when you were unconscious from acute appendicitis, to implant what we called a consciousness anchor, a novel conceptual mechanism. In 2002, the technology was immature and offered only one chance. It was shelved soon after due to exorbitant costs and unverifiability. It was merely a theoretical model in its infancy. I only confirmed it had no side effects on the subject. I didn't even know if it would work. After all, no one knows what lies beyond death, unobservable and imperceptible to us. Perhaps all of you had already vanished with the demise of your body, or perhaps you are watching me write these words right now. Regardless, only now do I realize that back then, out of selfishness, not wanting you to leave me, I made you the vessel for the consciousness anchor. I stood frozen, a chill creeping down my spine. So that's why I retain consciousness after death. Why I've been bound to his side all this time. June, tell me. A white snowfield blanketed the window panes. His handwriting came to a halt on the final page. Can humans truly return to the past? The researchers at the Russian lab seemed quite welcoming of Liu Chong's arrival. Or rather, nearly every laboratory in the world welcomed Liu Chong. Nestled within a snowfield, this structure was said to gather the world's most cutting-edge technological prowess. They devoted every effort to tackling that proposition, a problem humanity has vainly attempted to solve for centuries, whether it's leaping into the future or returning to the past. I watched as Liu Chong set down his luggage. He threw himself into research without a moment's rest, watching the stack of papers before Liu Chong grow into a thick pile, seeing him constantly forget to eat, his daily sleep always pitifully scarce. He seemed to have gone mad, as if, or perhaps truly, driven solely to verify the answer to that problem. During his rare free moments, he would write me messages in that notebook. I understood neither space-time leaps nor quantum entanglement, but if I exist here, then perhaps their experiment holds some chance of success. And during these days, seeing Liu Chong become like this, as time whispered by like a fleeting white steed, I realized I felt no fatigue, no boredom. A mere consciousness no longer harbors such emotions. I sat on the nearby bookshelf, watching him ponder. All along, did I hate him? Truthfully, not anymore. Emotions were down to nothing in the end. Honestly, Liu Chong was neither particularly good nor bad. We were just an ordinary couple, perhaps loving without much sweetness. That was all. I gave him my body, my heart, my everything. Sadly, by the time he looked back, I was already gone. And when I learned how deeply my departure had shaken him, I felt nothing at all anymore. Liu Chong is truly formidable. He can wear down even the most fervent heart until it's spent. He thought he wouldn't care, but in the end, he miscalculated. But it no longer mattered to me. I sat there, watching it all unfold like scenes from a play. The ending meant nothing to me. Liu Chong no longer mattered to me either. As for all those years I wasted on Liu Chong, I have no regrets. Life's choices aren't meant for regret. How I wish Liu Chong could understand this truth and let me go, instead of persisting with this mad experiment as he is now. His theory involves dividing a person into tiny, minuscule fragments. It's somewhat obscure and hard to grasp, and I can only try my best to understand it. That minuscule fragment could no longer be called an individual. It was atoms, 10 to the 28th protons. Miraculously, each proton in its quantum state could precisely mark its structural function. It formed a proton stream, which is my current form of consciousness. Only this proton stream possesses the conditions to advance through the wormhole in a helical path at light speed. This experiment succeeded in Liu Chang's third year in Russia. He inserted his thumb into the machine. It activated, producing a smooth cross section without generating extra blood, bone, or nerves. He had successfully transformed into the same unobservable matter as me. The severing of his finger undoubtedly stimulated Liu Chang's nerves. He clutched his hand in pain and knelt on the ground. Yet he laughed. Over the years, he had grown increasingly neurotic. Mr. Zhao visited him once, bringing sesame cakes from the shop near his apartment after trekking across the snowy plains. Staring at the man before him whose hair had grown long enough to tie back, Mr. Zhao could only sigh. Leo, without Mrs. Lin around, there's no one left to keep you in check. I don't believe my existence brought Liu Chang anything of value. All I could do was offer him a cup of hot tea when he was tired. Was this cup of hot tea important? If Mr. Zhao could answer my question, he would surely grab my shoulders and nod emphatically, saying it was important. The experiment entered its second phase during Moscow's spring. Once the conditions for artificially creating proton streams were met, all that remained was to manufacture a wormhole capable of traversing time and space. I don't understand physics, but wormhole was definitely the most frequently appearing term in the sci-fi stories of my magazine. That alone speaks volumes about its difficulty and absurdity. He aimed to artificially create a wormhole and define this endeavor with a new term. He called it quantum self-fission. I read the words he wrote in his notebook. Under high machine pressure, low temperature, and a high-frequency electromagnetic field, locally perturb the stable vacuum. Use a guidance device to force nonlinear fluctuations in the vacuum state, extracting a spatial point from its original causal chain, thereby splitting it into two coherent entrances. It doesn't pierce through space, but restructures the local space's topological structure. I can read the Chinese characters, but strung together like this, I can't quite grasp their meaning. In short, based on his proposed quantum fluctuation theory, a vacuum is not completely empty, but contains spontaneous generation and annihilation of virtual particles. Within extremely short time frames, energy fluctuations occur in space. Under specific conditions, these minute fluctuations can be artificially amplified or manipulated to form a wormhole entrance that tears open the fabric of space. Liu Chang's experiments progressed even less smoothly than before, with fewer and fewer supporters. Over the years, he had ceased activity in applied physics, even attracting criticism that he had descended into pseudoscientific research, delusionally pursuing the impossible dream of time reversal. They called him a madman, experimenting on himself, destined to die one day on that terrifying machine. In fact, the precondition for time travel in his theory was death. After all, once broken down into protons, a person would be reduced to something finer than dust. For this reason, no one was willing to be his test subject. He would become the first test subject of the behemoth he had created, perhaps also the last. On a sunny morning in Moscow, he reached the final stage of his experiment. The few remaining followers were tasked with observing the entire experiment from outside a glass room. As he lay inside that oddly shaped box made of silver, vortex titanium, the machine activated, but no one knew it was slicing him into countless minuscule, invisible fragments, or if it could truly take him through time. Perhaps it was both. A buzzing operational sound filled my ears. Regardless of his condition, I soon felt a reaction. Something was pulling at me. It was a kind of resonance, a vortex. I spun along with its motion, yet felt no dizziness. I could not perceive, yet knew that self was a fluid. Countless things exploded, darted, and surged around me. I was being led, yet also felt as if rushing forward, unable to perceive the passage of time. It was as if billions of years roared past my ears, yet also only an instant. I fell into an abyss, plummeting endlessly down. Had Liu Chang's experiment succeeded? Perhaps, but I had no time to spare for the cheers of the crowd, no time to ponder his greatness or the changes the future would bring. I saw what I could not see, those swirling vortices, heard what I could not hear, those faint whispers, until a brilliant light flooded my vision. I opened my eyes. A spring breeze brushed past. Sunlight streamed through the library window, and the poetry journal in my hand turned to the next page. Someone beside me tugged at my sleeve. June, Liu Chang is the teaching assistant today. If we go late, we might not get a seat. The crowd surged hurriedly around us. Though the library's resources were incomplete and its facilities slightly worn, it was often filled with diligent youth striving for new ideals. A soft melody played, and voices pulled my thoughts back. June, what's wrong? Weren't you always dreaming about Liu Chang? Hurry up, or we really won't find a spot. Liu Chang. Hearing that name, I suddenly snapped back to reality. It was like white noise, gentle yet impossible to ignore. But this time, I realized something. Quite intuitively, upon hearing this name, my first instinct was to avoid it. I no longer love Liu Chang. All these years, I've clearly thought of him for so long, stayed by his side for so long enough to build a family, long enough to become each other's daily support, even family. In every day and night when my heart was stirred by him, I drifted in a daze. Suddenly, I realized that one day, I felt nothing for him anymore. So it turns out there really would be a day like this for me and him. I gently pushed away the girl's hand holding mine, smiled at her. You go ahead. I want to read a bit more. At least give me one more chance to start over. I don't want Liu Chang. A commotion arose at the door. Not too loud, but just enough to make me look up from the dated digest I was reading. Someone looked hurried. When normal people hurry to find someone, most of the time, others just glance at them and move on. But that was Liu Chang, 20-year-old Liu Chang, whose white shirt perfectly accentuated his waist, with his black tousled hair gently swaying in the breeze as he walked. His features were sharp, yet unlike his older self, he still carried a youthful edge, like a sword freshly drawn, pursing his lips with an air of keeping strangers at bay. In that unadorned era, he walked like a model straight out of a fashion magazine, drawing all eyes irresistibly toward him. I hid my face behind a book, hoping to go unnoticed. Unfortunately, he strode directly toward me. He grabbed my wrist and tried to kiss me. I raised my hand and slapped him. Both actions likely happened within 2 seconds, eliciting a soft, collective gasp from those around us. His face was turned to the side from the impact of my slap. His bangs shadowed his dark eyes, obscuring his expression, but I could feel his grip on my wrist remained unyielding. June, he called my name. I stared back at him. Let go. Will you? A cold, firm tone. I never thought I'd one day use it on Liu Chang. Like this. We're definitely the center of attention anyway. I don't mind laying everything out in the open. Liu Chang, if you keep dragging me like this, the whole school will spread rumors about you harassing a female classmate. He released my hand. Sorry. Actually, if we're being precise, it's been so long since I last spoke to Liu Chang after I died. He subconsciously pressed together the thumb and forefinger that had touched me, gently rubbing them. June, we've gone back to the past. Can we start everything over again? I looked at him deeply, very deeply. Some things just can't be helped. You don't realize you've fallen for someone until it's too late. And when you want to turn back, you find you can't return. People call that regret. Liu Chang is too proud. Relationships between people always start beautifully. Then friction breeds resentment. Liu Chang was the one turned upside down. He didn't care about me at first, but in the end, he cared about me immensely. But I don't like you anymore, Liu Chang. As the setting sun swayed gently, I walked past him and spoke, enunciating each word clearly. I never imagined that one day, the roles between Liu Chang and me would be reversed. But that's just how it turned out. In the past, I worked hard to develop new recipes just so he would eat one more bite. Now, he's no less intense in his efforts. I abruptly stopped walking, and the man following me halted as well. I watched as he pulled out a bouquet of dazzlingly fresh roses from behind his back. He was too eye-catching, even more so than a bouquet of roses. A young man with downcast eyes, pale as jade, holding vibrant roses. It was indeed a pleasing sight, yet, looking at it, I felt not even a ripple of emotion inside. In fact, it was somewhat annoying. Leo Chong, look at yourself, standing on the stairs. I looked down at him from above. Don't you think this isn't like you anymore? After all these rejections, aren't you tired of this yet? Why must you cling to me? You've been reborn. Surely, there are countless things you could be doing. Why bother? I don't care. I can't do it. I would give up everything. But a life without you. He suddenly stopped speaking. His dark eyes gazed deeply into mine. I don't want to spend another second here. June, I would die without you. His eyes were truly beautiful, like obsidian, deep and captivating. I suddenly remembered how I used to yearn every day for his clear, gentle gaze to fall upon me. How I longed to hear sweet words from him. But why is it that now I don't want to see or hear any of it? The wind sheared, scattering petals in its wake. But I don't love you anymore. That's the reason. The reason his eyes reddened the moment I told him. These days, whenever I return to the dorm, I become the center of attention. I held my book, letting my roommates chatter around me. June, you're a total celebrity now. Spill it. What's really going on between you and Leo Chong? How did you even get involved with him? Turning down Leo Chong, my roommate nudged my shoulder. That's just too cool. Probably because, in everyone's eyes back then, Leo Chong was about as likely to chase someone as proving the Riemann hypothesis. But compared to all that, I've traveled back in time. Leo Chong really doesn't matter anymore. I closed my book and hopped off the bed, waving them over. Let's not talk about that for now. Interested in starting a business? Starting a business? I nodded, flipping open the magazine in my hands to show them. All the books we read now are paper, right? Whether it's serialized novels or submissions. But if I told you that, in the near future, the novel format hosted on websites would rapidly rise to prominence, would you believe me? I want to create a website for serializing novels. Terms like website and web novel are rarely mentioned in this era. The blueprints we sketch for the future in our youth are always tinged with madness, and the unknown holds its own lingering allure, especially since I now hold the key. One thing is certain, in this lifetime, I can start everything anew. So compared to tangled, complicated romance, indeed, walking the path never taken is far more enticing. Starlight shimmered in my eyes. That night, the lights in the girls' dorm stayed on until dawn. Everything for me began again. In this lifetime, there will be no Leo Chong.